So our first presenter is going to be Taran Hutchinson, we affectionately known as Hutch. And so you can come on up here. You can get ready. All right, so Mr. Hutchinson manages the MATOC Operations Center located in College Park, Maryland. MATOC assists with interagency communications and coordination associated with surface transportation's operations in and around the National Capital Region. Besides day-to-day operations, the MATOC program also assists transportation agencies address coordination issues related to severe weather events as well as planned and construction events. Prior to coming to MATOC in 2010, Mr. Hutchinson worked as an operations manager for the Virginia Department of Transportation in Northern Virginia. Hutch, over to you.
Thank you, Charles. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I've got some slides up here. Charles talked about the MATOC program, the Metropolitan Area Transportation Operations Coordination Program. It's a joint operations program between the three major DOTs up in this area, in the Washington, D.C. metro area, and Metro, the transit system. And we're tasked with kind of keeping their operations centers connected, making sure their staff are aware of things that are happening across the river in their own backyard. And what at the center of the program is our operations center up in College Park, and it happens to be connected with the CAT lab. We're actually up on the third floor, and Michael Pack and his team sort of take up the second and fourth floor. So if we ever have problems with the systems that we use, we can go and talk to the developers. But this is our center up in College Park. We have a staff of 5, including myself. I have 2 operators, and I've got an analyst. I've got an operations assistant. But typically we have one person in that room that's monitoring all the systems, all the data that's being provided by the DOTs. But we're also crowdsourcing information, and we're looking for anomalies, things that shouldn't be there. And if we see something, we're going to say something. So we're looking at Twitter and Waze, and VIZ is that core system. And our main task is to, again, keep everybody aware of things that are happening around the region on the network. And if something if something isn't in the system, we're going to reach out to that agency and let them know. And if it's big enough, we're going to hit the regional alerting systems, talk to the emergency management groups, maybe convene a conference call. But it all starts in that room. There we go. Why is this such a big deal in this region, the National Capital Region? Well, it's a very complicated area. It is the home of the federal government, a lot of federal and state jobs. Again, you've got 3 sort of state-level DOTs, you've got 22 local governments. Everybody has their own police department, fire department, you name it. A lot of transportation agencies, so transit operators, departments of public works. And so when things occur, we all sometimes need to talk, and if something really big occurs in someone's backyard, and everybody, that particular agency or jurisdiction will focus on their piece of the puzzle, and they're not really concerned about everybody else. So we kind of fit in this place where we can bring everybody together and have a conversation. So a complicated area. We don't cover everything. Again, we cover the National Capital Region for the most part. But we only cover a select set of roads. We don't cover everybody's roadways. But these are this is the network that our operations centers have defined as these are critical roads. If you see something impacting this network, let us know. So we're going to be looking at those interstates, freeways, major arterials, and we're going to be looking at those areas close to border crossings, river crossings. And then we're going to assess, is this going to be a regional event? Where are the cascading effects? So we're looking for those triggers, 50% lane closures, anything that might be out there for more than 30 minutes. And of course, we all know, see something, say something. So we're actively looking for those anomalies. And for the most part, the systems that we monitor cover that network. And RIDIS is that core system for us. It's the system that pulls together all this disparate data from all these transportation networks or agencies and provides that real-time sort of situational awareness of what's going on. It archives everything, and we'll get to that a little bit later. We typically use RIDIS on that lower left-hand corner where we're monitoring our roadway network, monitoring how the systems are performing. If we need to go back and do an after-action review, all that data is there. We can look at what actions were taken, what were the cascading impacts, and so forth. So for us, when we log into the system, again, this is our primary system. We have a lot of other systems we log into. It provides us that common operating picture. So when we manipulate that, or we turn on certain layers and we set those layers and information a certain way, we can quickly identify those anomalies. So in this case, we've set our traffic map to comparative speed, and we're using INRIX in this case. So anything in red would show up as, hey, this is unusual. This is not good for this time of day. And we can take a look at that and say, well, I'll actually point that out. There's a little issue up on 270 there. We don't see any DOT information being put in. There's no system or no incident being put in at the in the Maryland ATMS platform. So our next call would be to that area of Maryland and talking to their operations center. Hey, what's going on? Do you know anything? Or we might be calling state police or the local police departments, PSAPs, and so forth to figure out what's causing that slowdown. So if we need additional information, we've got it, right? The system allows us to look at the overhead messaging. We can access the traffic detectors. We can look at the probe data. We can pull up speed profiles. We've got everybody's cameras, again, signage. We have the emergency dispatch channels on radio and the radio scanner. And so, for our area in the DC metro area, the Dulles Toll Road, if anybody flew into Dulles Airport this morning or last couple of days, that corridor between Dulles Airport and Washington, D.C. isn't patrolled by Virginia State Police or managed by VDOT. That's its own entity. That's the airport's authority. That's a blind spot for us. So in this case, we might be loading up the dispatch channels to listen to, hey, what's going on out there? We can pick up some of the radio frequencies from College Park, but we can't cover everything, so we have to turn to systems like this. So very quickly, our operators can identify, okay, Airport Authority, you're dealing with this. Fairfax County, you're dealing with that. Hey, VDOT, do you know this is going on? Because sometimes those calls aren't made, those notifications aren't made, so we can at least connect the folks. And once an agency knows about what's happening, they know what to do. They know how to respond. They just got to get the right information to the right person at the right time so they can make the right decisions. I'm not sure if everybody's ever seen this, but this is an incident timeline. This is just a graphical interpretation of what an incident looks like. So an event occurs, an incident or crash, what have you. This one started at 10:07 in the morning. This was actually a Thursday in the summer. It happened close to College Park, up where we are. We can actually see in this timeline, you can see all the notes the DOT operator is logging in with the system, right? So the more they put in, as a former ops manager, the more my operators are putting in, I don't have to call over and ask a billion questions. Hey, who's been notified? What's going on? I can just read the internal notes of the incident and get the information. We know what resources are being required to be at the scene, who's been notified, how long it took to get there, how long they stayed on scene. So we have that piece of the puzzle figured out. And as you can see, this incident took most of the day to clear up. And the reason is because you've got a complete closure of the Capitol Beltway. So we can see the lane status, we can see the queue profile, how fast it's growing. Just so you know, this is about 10 o'clock, 5 o'clock's in here. So this queue is actually starting at that point, it's starting in Tyson's Corner, Tyson's, Virginia. So that's about 17 miles. So imagine sitting in a queue for 17 miles trying to get home. And even after they clear all the lanes up, after they get the initial sort of assessment and cleanup going, they get their main lanes back. But the recovery took quite a bit. And even after it cleared up, it still took almost 30, 45 minutes to get that queue dissipated. And that was well into the evening. What's also nice about this, we can see where the incident is. There's a map that you can reference. You can see the messaging, all the DMS messages. And what we've been doing at the center is actually, if we see something that maybe someone's tweeting about or something on Waze, someone's taking a picture, we know that this timeline tool is a great way of, when you connect an after action view, everything is sort of packaged up in a nice gift, right? So if you have a picture, you can add it to the timeline. So, or in this, and we just understand we can actually upload video. So you have a video clip, you have an incident responder, your incident management coordinator in the field. They got a camera, they got a phone, they can upload this to the timeline. We can all see it. So we get, the overhead media shot. We can get the person, the incident commander on scenes showing us what's actually going on out there. So when we, in the days that follow, if we need to go back to this event, we can look through the incident archive, get this timeline, and review this as a group. In our notification process, we actually include the RIDIS timeline in all of our notifications because we know that a lot of our users or our recipients are using this platform. So they have that unique URL with this, for this event or this, whatever event it is. They can click on it, open it up, and they've got the entire history of the event and all the information that goes with it. I think people have seen this graphic before. You'll probably see it again. Probe data. This is actually, for us, was a game changer because now we can see what's actually out there on the roadway. Where, yes, we have access to the detectors. This is just a sample of just some of the probes that are out there. So we know where people are, what direction they're going, and how fast they're going for that moment. And so if the system, RIDIS, is collecting all this data and archiving it, that's good for us because now we can actually go and visualize this because we can map this out. So in this case, we're using, I think it's INRIX. This is actually, this was a screenshot I took yesterday simultaneously across these 3 windows. It's all the same data, but they're set to different modes. So the first sort of column is on the left, raw speed. This just shows you what speeds are like on all the roadways. Well, if I'm looking at that map, I would be kind of freaking out. Well, I'm looking at urban streets, which folks in this area, are probably driving at 10 or 15 miles an hour. But if you compare that to a freeway where folks are moving at 70, 80 miles an hour, it looks a little bit different. So for folks, if you're using your navigation system in your car or your phone, you're probably seeing the congestion mode of this probe data. So that map looks very familiar. That's, you look at news broadcasts, what have you. That's what they're referencing. What we did was we took it even further. We said we want to remove all that noise. So we require our operators to look at the world through the comparative speed mode. So we know all this data is being archived. We're measuring the current speed. So if we can compare the two for this day, this time of day, this day of the week, that last column shows me all the things that, where things are unusual. Anything in red, yellow, orange, what have you, that's unusual. So that clues my operators to figure out, okay, this area of 301, there might be something going on there. That's unusual. Something going on in Tyson, something up in Montgomery County. This was actually yesterday afternoon. We saw something on I-97 near BWI pop up. So it's a very quick way of identifying issues that, those anomalies. And if we don't see, any action by the DOTs, we're going to call them and say, hey, our data is, the INRIX data or the HERE data or the TomTom data is suggesting that there's an issue going on in this part of the interstate or arterial. Are you aware of anything unusual? All right. Then, if we can't find anything, if we call an agency, they don't have anything, media broadcasts aren't talking about anything, we can crowdsource social media. So in this case, we actually actively crowdsource Twitter, and we follow sort of trusted sources. We try to find other agencies to follow. That's how we first started, and then we started following sort of media companies and other public information officers, and depending on the discipline they're in, we kind of put them in columns. So if we have a traffic reporter from a media group, we'll put them in our traffic column. If we have a public safety PIO person, we'll put them in the public safety column. And so, this is up on our wall. We're looking at this, and when someone's tweeting something, on a jurisdiction, an agency is putting something out, a press release, we can see it based on their discipline. And when I was looking at this, I took the screenshot. I noticed something right here. And I was like, oh, that's in. In the news column, someone's talking about there's an image of a fire. This came up. And so we're like, well, what is this? And we looked at the tweet and said, well, it's near I-97 in Anne Arundel County. Went right to our RIDIS map. Are they, does the DOT know about it? Sure enough, they do. They're actively responding to it. They've got folks on scene. We can see some communication, what's happening. And then we realized, hey, it's right next to the airport. All that smoke, does that cause an issue for folks coming into BWI? I don't know. But the agencies, they're involved, they're engaged. We can leave this alone. But that's how we use that type of data. And that's typically what's happening in our centers. We're constantly just checking, does this make sense? If it looks like an agency's engaged, okay, no worries. But if not, we'll get on the phone, we'll get on the radio and ask the questions. Or we might be sitting there and somebody actually tweeted this at us, caught it live. Someone drove by it's a brand new accident. They tweeted something out, tagged us. We looked at it and said, hey, this just happened. So in this situation, we're about a mile or two into Maryland, north of Virginia, on the Beltway. And so our next, we said, okay, the state DOTs are probably aware about this, and Maryland folks are responding to it. The local fire departments are probably on their way. Our next call is to contact Virginia and let them know that this queue that we're watching on that left side is going to expand quickly into Northern Virginia. And can you light up signs on the Virginia side to warn people about what they're going into? And also with the Park Service, parkways in this particular area, we're going to be talking to our U.S. Park Police and let them know that the spillover is going to be impacting their network. VIZ, we all know VIZ. This is off their main site. And way back when, we used to rely on this heavily. And sometimes we'll actually go back to it and see what the live site is doing. Now with the RIDIS platform, we're getting that, and there are other systems that are ingesting this type of data. So we actually, instead of following individual people, we're actually looking at just the haystacks, who's reporting what. And within this layer of RIDIS, you can pull that up. The challenge is there's a lot of data in there. There's so much of it. And so you have to be kind of smart with how you filter a lot of this stuff out. And so within the platform, we've realized, hey, you can actually remove maybe folks based on how reliable the reporting is. So you see a lot of reports out there. You can see some have a reliability score of 5, some have 10, 9, 8, what have you. So we can actually go in and say, well, remove everybody with or anybody less than a 10. So now these ones are probably more reliable. I can trust that that's an accurate report. But quite frankly, there's so much out there. And depending on what we hear back from our agencies, if they have the information or not, in some cases you might have public safety computer-aided dispatch data, so CAD data. We can see what maybe the local police department is dealing with. If it's not there, okay, now we're going to look at WAZE. If it's not on WAZE, maybe it's on Twitter. So that's what our operators are doing. They're always trying to look for things that either make sense or don't make sense, and reach out and touch folks and see if they can respond if they're available to. So this is a very typical thing that's happening in our center. So the operators, when they hear about an event, right, we've got all the agencies responding to it. They're always assessing the cascading impact. So this was on I forgot what morning this was, but we have a major crash on 95. It happened overnight. The recovery was going to take a few hours. This loaded tractor trailer basically went through the median, ended up in the northbound lanes. It was basically they have to come in and unload the truck, remove all the vehicles, the components, and so it was going to be a long it was going to be an extended closure. And so immediately our thought is, okay, we know the incident, we know what's happening, the lane status. We can see, what are the alternate routes? The most obvious ones, US 29 to the west, the Baltimore-Washington Parkway to the east. And depending on what we're seeing, we can actually pull up the INRIX data and look at the speed graphs and figure out, It doesn't look like it's going to hit the locals too much because we're actually on the, things are improving. At that point in the morning, it looks like the initial shock is done. Folks are figuring it out. But with the federal facilities along the Baltimore-Washington Parkway, that's going to just get worse. It's not really improving. We need to talk to our Park Police counterparts and ask them, hey, is there anything else you guys need? Do we need to sit down with you all and with State Highway and see if there's anything else we can do to help this out? So that's a very common sort of activity that's happening in our centers. I like this one because this has happened a few years ago, because this is where we actually connected some of the dots. We have a major closure, a major crash. Oops. Go back. Well, we have a major crash right up at US 50 in the Beltway. It involves a Maryland State police officer. We knew immediately that's going to be a while. That's not going anywhere with the investigation. Number one, we realized, okay, this is a Friday morning. There was that rain event last night. There was a water main break, which flooded out US 1 and took out the commuter rail line next to it. So that's going on. And then we said, well, the state DOT said, hey, look, we've got something else going on because we've got a special event right at FedEx Field. We've got a big convention. That's going to draw a lot of people in. Okay, that's something else to consider. And then it was, well, we've got road work along one of the alternate routes. If you're coming from Virginia into Maryland, that's probably one of your workarounds, but that's right now not a feasible option because we've got road work on DC 295. So very quickly, it's a call to Virginia to ask for help, but also something that sort of crept up on us was there's also a drawbridge opening. The Woodrow Wilson Bridge was supposed to open that day. Well, luckily, that was later in the evening, but it was something to keep an eye on because, with this event here, it took several hours that morning to clear up, but that was a very quick call, again, back to Virginia. Hey, can you guys help us with some messaging on your side and just push folks the other way because coming this way into Maryland isn't an option. So that puts a lot of pressure going the other way on the Beltway. And this happens, quickly. Within 5 or 10 minutes, we can all make it happen. And it's because we have those efficiencies built into systems like RITIS to identify these issues. Was anybody here on July 8th in DC? No? Maybe, yes. You all remember the rain event on that Monday? Typically that week is a slow week. It's post July 4th. Everybody's on vacation already. We had a big event come through, and we were staffed up in the center. I happened to drive through this massive rainstorm. I said, what is going on? And then sure enough, and this happened over the course of an entire morning rush. Things started happening on this side, and then we started seeing crashes, then all of a sudden things started flooding out. This is about a quarter mile to our east, west, south, somewhere nearby. It's Constitution Avenue. You got folks driving through flooded streets. And it took us right through to our threshold of, hey, we need to switch over to our sort of severe weather operations. Didn't quite get past that. And the reason was because that event, when it was hitting sort of DC, the other parts of the region were sort of drying out. And yes, it was inconvenient for some. But at that point, if this escalated, we would be calling our DOTs. We would have our maintenance counterparts, not our operations folks. We'll call our maintenance folks in and actually say, hey, what are we dealing with? What's the recovery for this type of event? So we actually did a little after-action review with our weather service. They're a partner in this process. So again, it's looking at these systems, realizing, hey, we're into something that's unusual. Funny thing, we had an operator call in that morning, hey, can I work from home? That's one of the features in our centers, that we don't have to be in College Park because we have access to these systems. As long as we have an internet connection, I could be halfway around the world doing the same thing. And he called and he said, hey, Hutch, can I work from home today? And I said, well, have you checked your email? And I said, we're dealing with this massive flooding event. He says, what are you talking about? I've got sprinkles here in Centerville, Virginia. I said, well, about 5 miles to your east, things are not looking that great. You may want to come on in. So he actually did. So that's the real-time stuff. A few years ago, we realized, hey, this actually, all this archived information is there. What can we do with it? And so we started creating trend maps. After a big event, we can kind of see what those cascading impacts are for these major crashes. We can look at specific corridors, we can look at travel time index, what have you, whatever the metric is. And then we got introduced to the user delay cost tables that you probably saw earlier today. The last bit kind of came up by accident, dashboards. And I'll talk about that in a bit. So I'm going to use this example. It happened a couple of years ago. Well, I guess last year. We have an overturned tanker, diesel fuel, 95 South, Prince William County, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's southbound direction, it's 2 o'clock, rush hour starting about an hour. Yeah, this could be a problem. So immediately we're calling Maryland, hey, can you light up, this is what we're dealing with. That's all we had to say. We have an overturned tanker on 95. That's all they needed to know. Hey, we got it. They're going to light up all the signs up on the Maryland side. Their big concern is, hey, we know if this is closed, all that truck traffic is going to be going down the 301 corridor. So they've done their piece. This incident lasted about 7 hours. Most of the delays were confined right in this part of Fairfax County. Didn't really get too far out. But looking at that incident, you've got an overturned tanker. It's on a slip ramp. It's a flyover. But it's not really in the travel lanes. Very quickly, the fire department determined, okay, it's safe, it's not leaking. We just have to we have to basically transfer the fuel, the contents, and we're done. We can upright it and get it out of the road. But the decision was made out of safety. We're going to shut down all of 95 for the rest of the afternoon, just so we don't bring folks into this mess, and move everybody to the express lanes, which are right adjacent to the general purpose lanes. The DOT side felt a little differently. We felt, well, maybe, if it's not leaking, maybe we just leave it there and deal with this after everybody gets home. Well, nope, we're gonna do it the fire department way. So we can go through the trend map, and what we did was we said, well, here's Monday, the event, where the event occurred, when it occurred. We're comparing that to the 4 previous Mondays, and we're just looking at just the congestion metric. And you can kind of see at 2:30, this is just after the event started, what you would expect, what's actually happening. 3 hours later, 5:30, yeah, you would have some congestion, but look, you can kind of see the difference. But at 8:30, when things should be just peachy clean, it's green, everybody's going home, we still got this big backup here. So we could use that interaction. We can say, hey, look, this is what happened because we made that decision. We've got this type of congestion going on. We can look at the performance charts, look at travel time. So we're looking at the southbound GP lanes. See the big deviation there. Look at the express lanes. So they had to basically lift the tolling on the express lanes, push all the GP traffic into it for the remainder of that evening. And you can see the impact to the Virginia express lanes. And then also, if we're going to look at the arterials, we can see what the impact of the arterials are. That's Route 1 through the same area. So we have all this information to go back to our after-action review and say, hey, did we make the right decision at that point? We took it in further and said, hey, let's look at the user delay cost, right? So again, we looked at a select set of roadways. We said, okay, these are the roads that were probably most impacted. Look at the interstate, the alternate routes, the feeders coming in. And so in this table, you've got the hours of the day on the x-axis going across the top. So midnight, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, what have you, going across the top. You have the days of the month, or the dates range that you've selected in the Y column. And so very quickly you can see where, for this set of roads we selected, here's your AM and PM rush. Oops. There is Monday, or sorry, the 20th, Monday the 20th. And that kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. And we can actually calculate that based on the values in the system, and we can, you can put your own values in. Selected those set of roads, right up here. Compare that to the 2 Mondays before, the Monday after. We looked at the totals at the end of the day, and those numbers say a lot. We can go back and say, hey, because we made this decision to deal with this now and keep the general purpose lanes closed, here is your cost. That's quite a bit. If we, maybe we go back and say, well, if we got at least 3 lanes, or at least 2 lanes getting by, maybe this number could have been $1 million instead of 1.3. So now here's some supporting information when we go back and make that argument. Hey, can we do this differently next time? If the tanker's not leaking, it's off the travel portion of the general purpose lanes. There's no real threat. Let's get everybody home. Deal with this after the fact. Something that came up. Again, I mentioned one of the things we started looking at were dashboards in our center. And this just happened by chance. We were sitting there in the office, and one of the operators said, hey, Hutch, something doesn't look right here. And this is actually the screen grab. So we were looking at the base map, and the coloring looked a bit off. At one moment, it was this color, and the next moment, it was a different color, right? What's going on here? And the speed graphs hadn't changed, but the coloring did. That's odd. It was a little glitch. Didn't think much of it. It happened again. We were dealing with a major crash up again in College Park. Overturned tanker or dump truck, a lot of debris. And our speed graph, when we took the sample, the coloring should be in this darker, bright red, but all we're seeing is green. It didn't make sense. And we realized that the developers were working on an upgrade to their tiling service, and what we were seeing was data that was 5 to 10 minutes old. And for us, that's an eternity when we're used to seeing things once a minute. And so they said, hey, we're working on an upgrade. Bear with us. And I said, okay, that's fine. Okay, good. But I need a workaround. I need something else to look at. And we realized, hey, wait a minute. In the Probe Data Analytics suite, there's this dashboard function where I can build these widgets, these speed and travel time tables. And we know those update once a minute. And so what we did was we tested it out. We said, okay, here is the entire loop of the Capitol Beltway. We know historical speed and the measured speed. We can see the differential. And we can do a travel time or speed. And then we realized, okay, that doesn't really make sense. Why am I going to measure the entire loop? What if I just break that loop up into maybe 6 portions? And so we put them into a new widget and said, okay, now I know kind of what areas of the Beltway I should be paying attention to at this moment. And then I realized, well, we can take those segments and break them up and organize them a bit based on sort of geographical footprint. And now I know, well, now I should be paying attention to maybe the top side of the Beltway rather than maybe the bottom side or other parts of the Beltway. So this proved what we were thinking. We're like, okay, we can actually use this. So we spent an entire week saying, let's get dashboards for all of our corridors. And so we said, well, first let's put Northern Virginia, the NCR portion of Maryland and the District of Columbia, and then just throw in all the major corridors and sort it by the speed differential. And now that, if I'm looking at this, you get the idea. We can focus our attention onto those networks. And then what we realized is we can actually take entire corridors and break them up into sort of, maybe there's a interstate that comes up, maybe from the west. I'll use 66, for example. You have 66 inside the Beltway, you have 66 just outside the Beltway, and then you have the rural part of 66 further on out. And we said, well, okay, what if I organize this with everything approaching DC left to right, I can find all the big corridors. And so I'm gonna pick on US 50 right here. So this is US 50 on the Maryland side, inside the Beltway, right, from the Beltway to the DC line. Here's basically the US 50 between the Beltway and Annapolis, and then everything outside of that. So I've created a sort of suburban section, a rural section, and then an urban section. And so based on this dashboard, now I can figure out, I don't have to look at a map anymore. There's this dashboard I can just pull up, and I can actually monitor segments of corridors individually. we had a shutdown of the metro system, or a portion of our metro system this summer, the yellow and blue line, right? So if you were used to using the blue and yellow lines, you could go as far as National Airport. Everything south of that, you had to take a bus bridge. And so our thought is, well, this is actually, we can use these dashboards to help us out. So we defined a local network that we figured out were these are the roads that were going to be impacted by additional buses. A lot of people that aren't, that typically would use a rail system, they're not able to. They're going to be they're going to be using this road, these set of roads. And then we realized, okay, if people are going to avoid those roads, where are they going? All right, let's throw that up on the dashboard. So immediately, very quickly, we realized, okay, we can see where these problem areas are on the alternate routes. We can see, in real time, once a minute, what's happening on the close-in roads. And so that was one application of this idea that you could use dashboards to your advantage. You don't have to have that map up in front of you all the time. So that's one of the ways we kind of use these tools on a regular basis. So if you come into our center, you're going to see a lot. You're going to see the map. You're going to have a lot of other dashboards available to you, or available to you. You can look at. And then you might have very specific ones that are dealing with short-term issues like this. There we go. And of course, we have the traffic view website, and so RIDIS again is that platform that we see as agencies. We encourage other jurisdictions, other disciplines to use the RIDIS platform. We use it in a certain way. I'm not saying it's the right way, but it's a way to use that type of platform in sort of real-time operations. And so when you go to folks like FEMA and some of the regional fusion centers, you'll see the RIDIS platform up and available to their staff. But for the public, we actually push out the public version of RIDIS, which is called Traffic View, and you've probably seen it in other deployments around the country. But it's a great way to kind of say, hey, you may not be able to see the sensitive stuff in this platform, but as a member of the public, you can actually see the same cleaned up data set as that we see in our side. So that's basically us. That's it for MATOC and how we use it in operations. So I'll open up any questions if anybody has any.